If emotional, slow-burn stories about courage, injustice, and second chances move you, please like this video and subscribe so you don't miss the next cinematic stories on this channel. The morning the world tried to break Lena Cruz, Seattle was still half asleep. Snow lay in thin, dirty bands along the sidewalks. Old ice trapped under a crust of new frost. The sky was a heavy sheet of gray. Breath hung in the air. Tires hissed on slush. Lena ran. Her backpack bounced against her spine. Her shoes, not built for ice, slipped just enough to make every step a small risk. Her lungs burned in the cold. She checked the time again. 7:52, 8 minutes. The hospital's main entrance was 4 blocks away. 4 blocks between her and the last clinical shift she needed to graduate. 4 blocks between her and 4 years of work meaning something. If she was more than 10 minutes late, the system marked it as a no-show. One missed shift, one red mark on the spreadsheet, and that would be enough to erase everything. Her fingers tightened on the coffee cup she carried. It had been her only treat that week. Now she hardly tasted it. The cardboard was just heat against skin. Head down, Lena cut across a side street, boots sliding on a patch of black ice. She threw her arm out, caught herself on a lamppost, and forced her feet to keep moving. Don't think just run. At the corner, the walk sign flashed green. A bus roared past, brakes squealing, the smell of exhaust washing over her. For a heartbeat, the sound changed. It was not a bus anymore. It was another one. Years ago, crowded and overheated, metal rattling, the smell of cheap cologne and old coats. A man had fallen to the floor between the seats. Her father, one hand clutching his chest, eyes wide with silent panic. "Someone call 911, she had shouted. Her voice had sounded small and thin against the hum of the engine. People had looked, then looked away, too scared, too busy, too uncertain. By the time the bus reached the hospital stop, her father had gone completely still. Lena blinked hard, bringing herself back to the present. Snow, gray, her own breath in her ears. Not again. Up ahead, the hospital's white bulk cut into the sky. The glass doors, the revolving entrance, the letters across the top. 7 minutes? She pushed herself harder, feet skidding. That was when an old man stepped off the curb 10 yards in front of her, his boots hitting a sheen of ice, his legs folding underneath him like they'd forgotten how to hold him up. His head hit the edge of the curb with a sound she felt in her teeth. He rolled partway onto his side and stopped moving. The coffee cup dropped from her hand. It exploded against the ground, dark liquid bleeding into snow. Lena slid to a stop beside him. "Sir," her voice came out high, thin. "Sir, can you hear me?" His eyes fluttered. There was a bloom of red under his white hair, already seeping down toward his collar. 2 people on the sidewalk slowed, stared, then hurried on. A third glanced at his watch, at her, then crossed to the other side of the street. Lena's heart hammered. Her hand flew to her pocket, finding her phone. 7:55. 5 minutes. If she called 911 and stayed, she would miss the start of her shift. If she ran now, someone else might come, someone more certified, someone not hanging their entire future on one precise arrival time. But the pavement under her knees might as well have been the floor of that bus. The air in her throat might as well have been the stale heat of that night. In her mind, her father's hand was still clawing at her sleeve. She could not watch someone else fade while she walked away. "Damn it," she whispered. She tossed her backpack against a mailbox and dropped to her knees beside the old man. "Sir," she said, "stay with me. My name is Lena. I'm a nursing student. I'm going to help you." "Okay." His eyelids fluttered. One hand twitched. She peeled off her scarf and pressed it to the gash on his head, fingers steady even as her stomach swayed. The wound was shallow but bloody. Head wounds always were. Blood soaked the wool fast, warm against her gloved hands. She thumbed her phone awake with her other hand and hit 911. 911, what is your emergency? A calm voice asked. Male, maybe late 60s, Lena said, breath clouding, slip and fall on ice. Head trauma. Outside the east side of Harborview. He's semi-conscious. Bleeding. I'm applying pressure. Is he breathing? Yes. Rates a little fast. Pulse present. Is he responsive to voice? Barely. He opened his eyes when I called to him. He mumbled something. His pupils are equal. He looks pale but not gray. Ambulance is on its way. Stay with him. Do not move his neck. Keep talking to him. She shifted, careful not to jostle his head. The cold seeped through her jeans into her knees. Her fingers burned with it. Hey, she said softly. Can you squeeze my hand? His right hand moved, fingers weakly closing around hers. Good, she said. That's good. Her phone screen had gone dark again. She woke it. 7:57. 3 minutes. Harborview is right there, she told the dispatcher, more to herself than anyone. I'm looking at it. Could you stay with the patient? The dispatcher repeated gently. You're doing great. The old man made a small sound. Not a word. Not yet. Just a low, confused noise. You'll be okay, Lena said. Help is coming. She wished she believed it for herself. The siren's wail cut through the winter air like a knife. It grew louder, echo bouncing off buildings, until an ambulance swung around the corner, tires crunching over frozen slush. Its lights painted the snow red and blue. Lena exhaled once, long and shaky. 2 EMTs jumped down, hauling a stretcher. One of them looked up, saw her, and did a double take. Lena, he said. She stared back. Jonah. He had been a year ahead of her in the program. Quick with a joke, solid with his skills, always the one staying late to help new students practice IVs. Then, one semester, he had just vanished. Rumors had filled the gap. He knelt opposite her, eyes already scanning the old man. What have we got? He asked. She rattled off vitals, the fall, the timing. He nodded as if she were another EMT, not a student in a cheap coat with damp knees. You did good, Jonah murmured. We'll take it from here. They slid a cervical collar carefully under the man's neck, transferred him onto a backboard, lifted him to the stretcher. As they strapped him down, the older EMT asked Lena for her name and contact. Student nurse, he said, when she told him. Trying to be, she answered. Jonah met her eyes for a heartbeat. There was weariness there, and something like recognition. If they give you hell for being late, he said quietly, call me. This is exactly what they say they're training us for. She nodded, not trusting herself to speak. The ambulance doors closed with a metal thud. The siren rose again, then faded as the vehicle pulled away, carrying the old man toward the hospital she was supposed to be inside. Lena grabbed her blood-soaked scarf, shoved it into the trash, grabbed her backpack, and ran. 11 minutes, she reached the ward door with her chest burning and her lungs tasting like copper. Students in Navy scrubs were already gathered at the nurse's station, clipboards in hand, listening to the charge nurse. Lena tried to slip into the back of the group, breath still ragged. Miriam Blake turned. The instructor's white coat was as crisp as ever. Her hair was pulled into a tight bun at the nape of her neck. Her expression did not change when she saw Lena. It rarely did. Miss Cruz, Miriam said, that you are late. I know. Lena panted. There was a man on the sidewalk. He fell, hit his head. I called. The policy is clear, Miriam interrupted. More than 10 minutes late to a clinical shift is considered a no-show. You knew that? Lena swallowed. He was bleeding, she said. His eyes were rolling back. No one else stopped. Then perhaps, Miriam said, voice cool, you should have left the house earlier. A few of the other students shifted, staring at their shoes. No one spoke. The charge nurse looked uncomfortable. She does smell like blood, she muttered. And she's got, Miriam held up a hand. This is not about intent, she said. It is about reliability. In nursing, showing up on time is not optional. If I start making exceptions, where do I stop? Lena felt something inside her lower chest fold up in on itself. I saved someone, she said too softly. No, Miriam replied. You delayed care by waiting for EMS instead of calling the hospital and letting us handle it. That is an error in judgment. You may file a formal appeal if you like. For now, you are dismissed from this rotation. Dismissed, the word scraped. You will not be completing this clinical, Miriam said, which means you will not meet graduation requirements this year. There it was. Clean, efficient, mortal. The room seemed to tilt. For a moment, all Lena could hear was the beep of a nearby monitor, the soft squeak of rubber soles. She wanted to argue, to shout, to point out that the hospital walls were 30 feet away while a man's life had leaked out onto the pavement. She thought of her father on the bus. She thought of the old man's hand weakly squeezing hers. Her voice came out quiet. "Yes, ma'am," she said. "Turn in your badge at the office," Miriam said. "We'll be in touch regarding next steps." Next steps, as if there was anything left. Lena turned and walked out, her body moving before her mind caught up. In the hallway outside the ward, she leaned against the cold tile and exhaled, a sound somewhere between a laugh and a sob. Her phone vibrated in her pocket. She ignored it. It took 6 hours for the email to arrive. By then, Lena was back in her tiny apartment, sitting at the scarred kitchen table, hands wrapped around a mug of cheap tea she kept forgetting to drink. The room smelled like damp and bleach. The radiator knocked in a regular rhythm without giving off much heat. Her textbook sat open and unread. She had washed her hands 3 times, but she could still see the blood under her nails. Her inbox chimed. She tapped the screen. Subject clinical performance status, Lena Cruz. The body of the message was short. Due to failure to complete required final clinical rotation, you will not meet graduation criteria for this academic year. You may reapply for placement the following term, subject to space and payment of additional tuition and fees. There were other words, policy references, links, but they floated past, meaningless. She stared at the first line until the letters blurred. 4 years, 2 jobs, night shifts at the cafe, sleeping on the bus between classes. Every exam passed. Every practicum signed off. All of it undone by 11 minutes. Her vision went watery. She blinked hard. The tears didn't fall. They just made everything shine too bright. Her phone buzzed again. This time, it was a text. Unknown number. "Hey, it's Jonah, from the ambulance. You okay?" She stared at the words. She thought of replying with a lum. She settled for a version of the truth. Got kicked from clinical. No grad this year. There was a pause. Then, "I'm sorry, I know what that feels like." She frowned. "You too." 3 dots appeared, disappeared, reappeared. "Got dropped from the program when I was late to a shift. I was on a call. Same line Miriam just gave you. Policy. No exceptions. I didn't fight it. I wish I had." Lena swallowed. "Who was the patient?" she typed. He didn't answer that. Instead, another text came through. "I pulled security footage from the corner store. That fall this morning, the guy you saved." She sat up a little straighter. "Yeah." He sent a video. The clip was grainy, timestamp flickering in the corner. The old man stepped into frame, coat collar up, breath puffing in the air. His shoes slid on invisible ice. His feet flew out. His head cracked against the curb. Then Lena ran in from the edge of the frame, backpack dropping, coffee exploding, hands already moving, knees on the ice, scarf to wound, phone to ear. She watched herself in third person, as if it were someone else. Security had his ID from a previous incident. Jonah texted. They attached it to the report. His name is Marcus Hale. The name meant nothing for a second. Then it snapped into place. Hale Technologies, Hale Foundation. Articles about the billionaire who'd grown up in a trailer and built an empire from a garage. "You're kidding," she wrote. "Wish I was," came Jonah's reply. She leaned back in her chair. The room felt suddenly smaller. She had saved someone important, someone with power, someone whose name made people pay attention. And she had been punished for it. She did not expect the universe to balance itself. But for a moment, she let herself imagine what it would be like if someone like Marcus Hale ever knew her name. The thought felt ridiculous. She closed her eyes. "I did the right thing. She told the empty room. I did the right thing. It was not comfort. It was a mantra, a thin line she could hold when everything else slipped. 3 days later, someone knocked on her door. It was a sharp, precise sound, not the sloppy thump of a neighbor, not the quick pattern of someone wanting to borrow sugar or complain about noise. She set her textbook down, heart suddenly in her throat, and crossed the room. The chain was still on when she opened the door a crack. A man stood in the hallway. He wore a charcoal coat over a dark suit, not flashy, expensive in the way good things sometimes just quietly were. His hair was dark with a few strands of silver at the temple, damp from the drizzle outside. His eyes were the first thing she really registered. Dark, clear, and tired. "Miss Cruz?" he asked. She tightened her grip on the door. "Yes," she said slowly. "Can I help you?" "My name is Adrian Hale," he said. "My father is Marcus." The hallway seemed to narrow around him. Lena's fingers closed harder around the edge of the door. "How did you find me?" she asked. He held up a hand in a small, appeasing gesture. "One of the EMTs tracked down the scene footage," he said. "He sent it to our foundation. It took one call to your school to find a contact, another to the landlord. I'm not here to invade your privacy. I'm here because I think you did something that shouldn't be swept under a rug." He pulled a tablet from his coat and tapped the screen. "May I show you?" he asked. She hesitated, then unhooked the chain and opened the door fully. He stepped just inside, careful not to bring too much rain with him. The apartment looked even smaller with him there, the sagging couch, the single window with condensation caught at the edges, the narrow kitchen. He turned the tablet toward her. It was the same clip Jonah had sent, but the angle was different, cleaner, higher resolution. She watched herself again. Coffee, knees, scar, hands. "You were the only one who stopped," Adrian said quietly. "Out of 14 people who passed within 30 seconds of his fall." She swallowed. "I couldn't just walk away," she said. "Did you know who he was?" Adrian asked. "No," she answered. "He was just an old man with his head on the concrete." He nodded. "He woke up in the ICU asking why it hurt so much to move." Adrian said, "The doctors told him he should be grateful for the pain. It meant his neck wasn't broken. A few centimeters either way, and he would have been paralyzed. Or dead." He looked up from the tablet. "He's alive because of you," Adrian said. "I know you've probably heard that from the EMTs already, but I needed to say it myself." Lena's throat felt tight. "I'm glad he's okay," she said. "I'm glad it mattered." He tilted his head slightly. "And your clinical?" he asked. "How did that go?" The question hurt more because of how gently he asked it. "I lost it," she said. "I was 11 minutes late. My instructor doesn't care why." "And now," he prompted. "And now," she said, "I'm not graduating this year. I get to pay for another semester I can't afford. If they even let me back in." Something in his jaw flexed. "I'm sorry," he said. He sounded like he meant it. Not like people did when they bumped into someone in a supermarket. Like someone who understood the shape of a loss even if he'd never worn it. "I can't change what happened on that sidewalk," he went on. "And I can't tell the school what to do. But I can ask them questions they'd rather not answer." She frowned. "What do you mean?" she asked. Adrian slid the tablet back into his coat. "Our foundation finances a huge portion of their scholarship program," he said. "And our company's name is on half the simulation labs in that building. If they are punishing nurses for saving lives, I need to know. And if they are disproportionately punishing students who come from backgrounds like yours, I really need to know." He pulled an envelope from his pocket and laid it on the table between them. "What is that?" Lena asked. "An invitation," he said, "to a meeting with the dean, with your instructor, with a representative from the scholarship fund, and with me. They have agreed to review your case. On the record." Her stomach dropped. "Why would they agree to that?" she asked. "Because I asked," Adrian said. "Because we donate more money than they're comfortable losing. And because this," he gestured at the apartment, the worn textbooks, The small space is exactly the kind of person those scholarships are supposed to help, not hurt. She held his gaze. I don't want to be your pity project, she said. He didn't flinch. Good, he replied, because I don't believe in pity projects. This isn't about charity. It's about accountability. She looked at the envelope, then at him. What do you want from me? She asked. To tell the truth, he said, in that room, on the record, about what happened on that sidewalk, about what happened in that ward. I can push open a door, but I can't walk through it for you. The thought of sitting in a room with Miriam, with the dean, with strangers in suits, it made her stomach twist. She had spent most of her life trying not to be seen too much. Too much attention meant scrutiny, questions, judgments. But she also thought of Jonah, of his text, the regret buried between the lines. I didn't fight it. I wish I had. If she stayed quiet now, if she let it all slide past just to avoid the discomfort, wouldn't she be choosing the same bus full of turned heads her father had died on? Her hands shook as she picked up the envelope. What if it doesn't change anything, she asked. Adrian's voice softened. Then at least they won't be able to pretend they didn't know, he said. The conference room smelled like stale coffee and copier toner. Lena sat at one end of the rectangular table, her back to a window that looked out over the city. Her hands were folded in her lap so no one would see them fidget. To her left, Adrian sat straight-backed in a black suit, the same tired alertness in his eyes. Beside him, a woman in a navy blazer with a badge from the Scholarship Foundation paged through a stack of printed documents. Across from them sat the dean, expression carefully neutral, and Miriam, posture perfect, white coat crisp even off the ward. At the far end, Jonah perched in a chair that looked too small for him, shoulders hunched, EMT jacket folded across his knees. A red light on a small recorder in the center of the table glowed steadily. We're here, the dean said, to discuss the situation involving Miss Cruz and the events of last Tuesday. As a reminder, this is an internal review. It is not a legal proceeding. Adrian's lips twitched, just slightly. For now, he said under his breath. The scholarship representative glanced up. We'd like to start, she said, with Miss Cruz's account. Lena felt all their eyes swing toward her. She took a breath, held it, let it out slowly. She told them about the morning, the ice, the fall, the blood, the sirens, the way her watch had ticked louder than her own heartbeat. She did not embellish. She did not dramatize. She just laid the facts out like instruments on a tray. Miriam did not take notes. She watched with a face that could have been carved from something smooth and pale. And then you arrived at the ward, the dean prompted. I was 11 minutes late, Lena said. I told Professor Blake where I'd been. She told me I should have left the house earlier. She dismissed me from the rotation. Miriam cleared her throat. Our policies are clear, she said. We cannot have students making subjective decisions about where their loyalties lie in a crisis. Hospital commitments come first. Lena turned to her. With respect, she said. He was right outside the hospital. And any nurse worth the license you're training us for would have done what I did. Miriam's lips thinned. Head trauma requires immobilization, she said. You could have made it worse by moving him. I didn't move him, Lena replied. I stabilized him and called EMS, exactly as we were taught. The scholarship representative interjected. Professor Blake, she said, are you saying that if any of your students encounter a medical emergency on their way to practice, they should ignore it to avoid being late? I'm saying, Miriam answered, that our training includes calling for the appropriate level of care and ensuring one's own reliability. Miss Cruz made a choice that put her professional obligations at risk. That is a concerning pattern. Pattern, Adrian asked quietly. Yes, Miriam said. This is not the first time a student has attempted to excuse lateness with a dramatic story. The woman from the Scholarship Foundation slid a folder toward herself. I'm glad you mentioned patterns, she said. We requested some data ahead of this meeting. She opened the folder and began to read. Over the last 5 years, she said 9 students on need-based scholarships failed to complete the program. In each case, the reason listed is failure to complete clinical requirements due to tardiness or minor policy violations. She flipped a page. In the same period, 7 students from full-pay families who committed similar infractions were granted exceptions or make-up opportunities. The dean shifted. Context matters, he began. It does, she agreed. Which is why I'd like to note that in 8 of the 9 scholarship cases, the final decision not to allow remediation was signed by Professor Blake. Silence spread across the table like a spill. Miriam's jaw tightened. I enforce the rules evenly, she said. If other faculty choose to be lenient with wealthy students, that is not my doing. Jonah cleared his throat. With respect, he said, that's not how it felt from our side. All eyes swung to him. He swallowed. I was in Lena's cohort, he said. I was late to a clinical shift once. 15 minutes. Because my EMT rig got stuck at a scene. I called ahead. I arrived with my uniform still bloody. Professor Blake told me I had made my choice and removed me from the program. He held Miriam's gaze. 2 weeks later, he went on, a classmate from a very well-connected family missed an entire shift because she flew to Cabo for a wedding. She got a write-up and a makeup day. We all knew. A flush crept up the dean's neck. That's a mischaracterization, he said. Is it, Adrian asked? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like the students you're most willing to lose are the ones with the least safety net. He slid a printed still frame from the video across the table. It showed Lena on her knees in the snow, hands pressing a scarf to a stranger's head. This, he said, is the kind of nurse I want taking care of my father. The kind who stops. The kind who uses her training even when no one's watching. And your institution's response was to punish her for it. Miriam's eyes flicked to the photo, then away. The rules, she began, are supposed to protect patients. Adrian cut in, not punish people for following the spirit of what you teach. The scholarship representative sat back. Our foundation invests in this program because we believe it prepares compassionate, competent nurses, she said. If compassion is treated as a liability, we have a serious problem. Her gaze settled on the dean. This program receives a substantial portion of its funding from the Hale Foundation, she said. We could redirect that to other institutions that align more closely with our values. The threat was not shouted. It was stated plainly, like a fact. The dean's hand tightened on his pen. There may be room, he said carefully, to reconsider certain cases. Lena's heart thudded against her ribs. Miss Cruz's case in particular. He went on. The circumstances are unique. Not that unique, Jonah muttered. Adrian didn't smile, but his eyes flickered. I propose, the scholarship representative said, a supplemental clinical rotation, one designed to allow Miss Cruz and any others in similar situations to demonstrate competence. One evaluated by a committee, not a single instructor. Miriam's mouth opened. I will not. You will be recused from evaluating these cases. The dean interrupted. Given the appearance of bias, we'll appoint another faculty member to oversee the rotation. He looked at Lena. Miss Cruz, he said, if such an opportunity were offered, would you be willing to complete it? Her throat felt dry. Yes, she said. Of course. And the other students, the representative asked. The ones forced out before the dean hesitated. We can review their files, he said. Reach out to those who may wish to return. That would be appropriate, she replied. Adrian leaned back in his chair. Good, he said. Then we're moving in the right direction. He glanced at Lena, and she saw something in his eyes she hadn't expected. Pride. That night, the city looked softer from the hospital roof. Lena sat on the low concrete wall around the parking garage, legs dangling above empty spaces. Her scrub pants were too thin for the cold, but she didn't mind. Lights spread out in all directions. Red taillights, office windows, the blinking beacons of distant cranes. Above it all, the sky hung low and heavy, reflecting the glow. Beside it, Adrian cradled a paper cup in both hands. The coffee inside had gone lukewarm. They were both too tired to drink it. It was the first moment all day that no one expected them to speak. You know, he said eventually, you didn't have to agree to that. To the review, she asked. To any of it. he said. I could have gone in there with the video and the numbers and yelled on my own. You could have stayed out of sight. She watched her breath rise and vanish. My father died on a bus while people stared at their shoes, she said. If I let them take my future because I stopped to help someone, and I don't say anything, then I'm no different. I'm just another person looking away. He was quiet for a moment. I wish I'd known you back then, he said, back when she asked, back when I still believed money could fix everything. He said, you might have saved me some time. She huffed a small, tired laugh. Oh, so now I'm a time-saving device, she said. He smiled without looking at her. You're a reality check, he said. A very inconvenient one. Down below, a helicopter settled onto the hospital helipad, blades slowing. Tiny figures rushed toward it. Somewhere in that building, somebody's worst day and somebody else's best effort were colliding. Why do you care so much, she asked. About all this. It's one nursing student, one program. You're running a company that builds, I don't know, satellites or something. Medical divers, he corrected gently. Diagnostics, surgical robots, boring stuff, until you need it. Still, she said, he stared out at the city. When I was 12, he said, one of my dad's earliest employees came into his office crying. Burned out, depressed. She begged him to slow down the launch schedule, said she couldn't keep up. His fingers tightened on the cup. He told her to take a weekend off, he said. Then he told his assistant not to staff her on critical projects anymore. He convinced himself he was being kind. He avoided the problem. A month later, she killed herself. The word hung between them, heavy. My father never talks about her, Adrian went on, but he started the foundation the year after. I think he's been trying to balance that equation ever since. He glanced at Lena. When Jonah sent me that video, I saw an opportunity to do something my father didn't. He said, to not look away, to not make a choice just because it was easier for me. And to protect your investment, she said, not unkindly. And that, he admitted, I'm not a saint, Lena. I sit in too many boardrooms for that. She studied his profile. Thanks for not making me feel like a prop, she said. He turned his head toward her. I thought about it, he said, using your story, putting your photo on the website. Look at this brave student. Look how our foundation swooped in to save her. It would have played well. And she asked, and then I saw your apartment, he said, and your hands, and your eyes. And I realized the only way I would be able to sleep at night was if I treated you like a person, not a campaign. He met her gaze fully. If you ever feel like I'm crossing that line, he said, you have my permission to throw your coffee in my face. She smiled for the first time that day. I don't waste coffee, she said, but I'll keep it in mind. For a while, they just sat. The city hummed, the sky hung, the cold crept through their clothes. In that small pocket of stillness, the noise of the hearing, of the arguments, of their own whirling thoughts quieted. They were just two people, sitting above a place where life fell apart and got stitched back together over and over. The supplemental clinica began a week later. It was a strange hybrid of regular rotation and performance exam. A small group of students, some current, some like Lena pulled back from the brink, were assigned to a high acuity ward. They rotated through patients under the watchful eye of a new faculty member. Everything was documented, every decision noted. Lena's hands shook for the first 12 hours. Then muscle memory took over. She hung IV bags, took vitals, charted carefully, talked to families, changed sheets, sat with a young man withdrawing from alcohol, his body shaking, his eyes full of shame. You're not your worst choice, she told him. You're just stuck on it like it's the only page in the book. The new instructor, a calm woman named Reyes, heard her and wrote something on her clipboard, face unreadable. Behind the observation window, Adrian sometimes appeared. He wore a visitor badge and stayed mostly out of the way, but Lena could feel his gaze sometimes, steady and curious. Once, during a mock Code's drill, he stepped in as the family member. his voice tight with pretend panic as Lena calmly explained what they were doing, what the beeping meant, why they were shocking a dummy's chest. "You're good at that," he said later in the hallway, translating the terror into words. "I'm good at being terrified," she said. "Might as well use it." Jonah showed up too. He took a week off from his EMT shifts to sit in on refresher classes the school grudgingly offered him. Lena met him in the cafeteria between sessions, both of them balancing plastic trays. "You sure about this?" she asked, going back. "Absolutely not," he said. "But I'm done letting one bad decision define the rest of my life, even if it wasn't my decision." He looked at her. "Don't you dare waste this," he added. "We fought a war for your second chance. Take it." She thought of Miriam packing up her office, the white coat folded over a cardboard box. She thought of the other students whose names were now being called again after years of silence. She thought of her father. "I planned to," she said. 2 weeks later, she passed. The evaluation felt almost anticlimactic. A signature on a piece of paper, a brief nod from the new instructor. "Competent, compassionate, ready," Reyes said. 3 words Lena wanted to carve into her skin. She walked out of the hospital that day feeling lighter and heavier at once. The envelope from the nursing board confirming her eligibility to graduate arrived 3 days after that. It sat on her table for an hour before she opened it, as if the weight of possibility might dissipate if she tore it too fast. "You have met all requirements for graduation," it read. She laughed, then cried, then laughed again through the tears. Her phone buzzed. "Marcus Hale would like to meet you." Adrian's text read, "At his house. No pressure, but he keeps calling you the kid who stole my death. And I think you should have a chance to answer." She stared at the message, then typed back, "Okay." Marcus's house overlooked water, not from a glass tower, not from a gated compound, but from a 2-story wooden home perched on a hill above Elliott Bay. The porch had chipped paint. Wind chimes dangled near the door, clinking gently. Inside, the decor was a mix of expensive and old. A framed abstract painting hung above a couch that had clearly seen years of naps. Family photos covered one wall, Adrian as a boy with a crooked grin, a woman Lena recognized from news articles as Marcus's late wife, grainy snapshots of factory floors and early prototypes. Marcus himself met them in the entryway. He leaned on a cane, but his posture was straight. His hair, white and still thick, was combed back. A faint scar peeked out near his temple, where hair had not quite grown back. "So," he said, "you're the reason I had to learn how to walk properly again." His voice was dry, with a little rasp. Lena felt her nerves tighten. "I'm sorry," she said automatically. "For keeping me alive," he snorted. "Don't be ridiculous. Come in, sit. My leg hurts if I stand around too long, and I have a lot of guilt to unload." He shuffled to the sofa, gesturing her toward a chair. Adrian disappeared into the kitchen, reappeared with 3 mugs of coffee. He set them down, then leaned against the doorway, arms crossed. Marcus wrapped his hands around his mug and studied Lena. "You remind me of someone," he said. "Who?" she asked. "Me," he said. "Many, many years ago. Too stubborn to let things go. Too guilty when they broke anyway." He took a sip of coffee. "I heard they tried to fail you," he said, "for doing what I pay half the staff at that hospital to do." "They succeeded," Lena replied. "For a while." He chuckled. "And then my son went to war," he said. "Good. He needs causes that hurt a little. Otherwise, he turns into his board." Adrian rolled his eyes. Marcus set his cup down. "When I was 30, he said, one of my engineers came into my office asking for help. She was working 80 hours a week on a firmware rollout. She was the brightest person in the room and the most tired. She said she couldn't sleep, couldn't think straight, kept having bad thoughts." He rubbed his thumb over the scar near his temple, as if it itched in sympathy. "I told her to take a long weekend," he said. "Then I quietly reassigned the critical tasks to someone else. I told myself I was being kind. I didn't ask any hard questions. I didn't change anything in the system that had pushed her to the edge." He looked at Lena, 3 weeks later, he said, she killed herself, left a note. My name was in it. Silence settled in the room. I started the Hale Foundation the next year. He continued. People called it philanthropy. I knew it was penance. I had failed to act when it was uncomfortable, when it cost me something. I have been trying to make different choices ever since. He pointed his cane gently in her direction. You made the choice I didn't, he said, on a sidewalk, in the cold. You let it cost you. Lena swallowed. It felt like the only one I could live with, she said. That's how you know it's the right one, he replied. Adrian stepped forward and placed an envelope on the coffee table. Before you panic, he said, this is not a check. Marcus nodded toward it. Open it, he said. Lena glanced between them, then reached for the envelope. The paper was thick. The weight inside felt heavier than a single sheet. She slid a finger under the flap and pulled out a letter on hospital letterhead. It took her a moment to process the words. We are pleased to offer you a position as a registered nurse in our intensive care unit. The rest blurred for a second: start date, salary, orientation schedule. Her heart thudded. She looked up. I haven't even graduated yet. It's contingent on you passing the boards, Adrian said, which you will. That's not how this works, she said weakly. I'm supposed to apply, and then people who haven't seen your hands in someone else's blood get to judge whether your resume has enough bullet points, Marcus said, waving a hand. I short-circuited the line. I'm an old man. I don't have time to wait for process. Dad, Adrian said mildly, we did go through the hiring committee. Marcus smirked. Fine, he said. We went through it quickly, with emphasis. Lena stared at the letter. I don't want to be hired because you feel sorry for me, she said. I don't, Marcus said. I'm hiring you because the cameras showed me my own failure from 30 years ago. Except this time the person in the room did what I wish I had done. He settled back against the couch cushions. You also have the right to say no, he added. But if you do, I'll have to find another stubborn idiot willing to take the hardest job in the building. And I'm too old for that search. Adrian shifted his weight. There's more you should know, he said. The hospital's PR department and some people on my board wanted to use your story, press releases, photos. Local scholarship student saves founder, earns dream job. The kind of narrative that makes people forget every bad headline for 6 months. Lena's stomach turned, and she asked, and I said no. He said, not unless you wanted it. Not unless you could control how much of yourself you had to put on display. He gave a small, crooked smile. I like to think I have some influence there, he said. I wanted you to understand that this offer isn't a trade. You don't owe us your privacy for a badge. Something in her chest loosened at that. A knot she hadn't realized she was carrying. But, she said slowly, if telling the story the right way means reminding other schools not to punish students for doing the right thing, then we find a way to tell it that doesn't turn you into a mascot, Adrian said. She looked down at the letter again. All her life, doors had felt either locked or too far away. Here was one open in front of her. The fear that someone would say she didn't deserve it did not vanish. It hummed under her skin, but Jonah's words echoed louder. We fought this hard to open the door. Someone has to walk through it. I'll take it, she said. The room seemed to get a fraction brighter. But, she added, no posters, no cheesy slogans, and no using patients' faces to sell anything. Marcus chuckled. Good, he said. If I see your face on a billboard, I'll assume Adrian has been replaced by a replicant. They met at Green Lake on a day the sky couldn't decide whether to rain or not. The clouds hung low over the water. Runners in bright jackets moved along the path in loops. Ducks bobbed nearest the shore, glancing hopefully at anyone who might have bread. Lena sat on a bench with her hands shoved deep in her coat pockets. Her new hospital ID badge hung from a lanyard around her neck, half hidden under the zipper. She had worked 3 night shifts in the ICU now. She had watched monitors beep out stories of bodies trying to heal. She had seen life hang by numbers. She had held hands when those numbers flatlined. She was tired, bone deep, but it was the kind of tired that came with purpose. Adrian approached with 2 paper cups. He handed her one and sat beside her, leaving the polite space of a person who remembered she might need it. "How's breathing?" he asked. She huffed a small laugh. "In general," she said, "or after 3 nights in the ICU?" "Both," he said. "In general, overrated," she replied. "After 3 nights, slightly more sacred." He nodded. They watched a dog chase a stick into the shallows. Splash. Shake itself in a spray that made a passing stroller curse. Adrian reached into his coat and pulled out an envelope. "Not as thick as the job offer. Thinner. Personal. I wanted you to have this," he said. "Another life-changing piece of paper?" she asked. "Depends how you define life-changing," he said. She took it, eyebrows raised, and slid the contents out. It was a photograph, printed on matte paper, slightly grainy, caught from a strange angle, but she recognized it instantly. Snow on asphalt, a man on the ground, and herself, knees on the ice, hands red, face focused on the body in front of her, not on the watch on her wrist, not on the building in the background. The silence in the frame was louder than any siren. She turned the photo over. On the back, in blue ink, in neat handwriting that tilted slightly left, were 12 words. From that second, I knew whose side I wanted to live on. Her throat closed. "I know you don't like being watched," he said quietly. "And you have every right to hate that camera. But for me, that moment is when everything shifted. Not just for my father, for me, for what I was doing with the power I inherited." She stared at the words until they blurred. When she looked up, his expression was open in a way she hadn't seen before. Guard down, edges softened. "I used to think my job was to keep the company alive at any cost," he said. "Now I think my job is to make sure the people we rely on to keep other people alive aren't broken in the process." He swallowed. "You made me see that," he said, "not in a board slide. In blood and snow and 11 minutes that could have gone a different way." The wind carried a bite. The coffee in her hands warmed her palms. "Adrian," she said. He slid off the bench and onto one knee in front of her. It was not dramatic. No orchestra swelled. A kid on a scooter sped past, squeaking. A gull screamed overhead. He reached into his coat again and pulled out a small box. "This is not the kind of thing I'm good at," he said. "But if I've learned anything from you, it's that you don't wait to speak when someone's life is on the line." She smiled through the trembling in her chest. "My life?" she asked. "Ours," he said. He opened the box. The ring inside was simple. A thin band. A small stone that caught what little light the day offered and held it quietly. "No press releases," he said. "No brand partnerships. Just this. I want to walk through whatever comes next with you. Through night shifts and board fights and terrible coffee. Through grief that still hits on random Tuesdays and victories that don't feel as big as they should." He looked up at her. "You've already stood at the edge of losing everything once," he said. "I want to be one of the reasons you stay." Her eyes burned. For a second, the world narrowed to the man kneeling in front of her. The ring. The photo in her hand. And the memory of another bridge where she had had no one. She thought of her father, of Marcus, of Jonah, of Miriam, of the patients whose names she would never forget and those she already struggled to. She thought of choosing to stop when it cost her. "I don't need saving," she said. "You know that." "I know," he replied. "That's why I'm asking." The answer was not complicated. "Yes," she said. His shoulders dropped with a breath he'd been holding. He slid the ring onto her finger. It fit like it had been made for her, though she knew mathematically that any jeweler could make that happen. He stood, and for the first time, he pulled her fully into his arms. The hug was not dramatic. It was solid, warm, the kind of contact people give each other when they have both seen too much darkness and still choose to stand in the light. A runner jogged past, smiled at them, kept going. When they finally stepped apart, Lena looked down at the photo again. "Promise me one thing," she said. "Anything," he replied. "If we ever hang this up," she said, "it goes in our house. Not in some lobby, not on a website, just Somewhere we can look at it when we forget why we're doing all this. He nodded and, "Deal," he said. Graduation smelled like flowers and anxiety. The auditorium was full. Rows of students in navy gowns and caps, families with cameras, faculty in regalia. Lena stood in line backstage, her heart thudding in time with the applause for the names ahead of hers. She scanned the crowd from the wings. Her mother sat near the front, eyes shining, tissues already clutched in hand. Next to her, a chair with a worn baseball cap on it, her father's. It made her throat tighten. On the other side, Jonah sat in a cheap suit, hair tamed badly. He waved when he saw her, then held up a piece of paper and email printed out, big letters visible from where she stood. Conditional readmission accepted. She grinned and gave him a thumbs up. There was no Miriam on the faculty row. In her place, Professor Reyes held a program and listened, face calm. When Lena's name was called, the sound of it bounced around in her chest. She walked across the stage, hands steady as she took the diploma folder. The dean smiled stiffly. Reyes squeezed her hand a little harder. "You earned this," Reyes whispered. The words sank in deeper than the paper. Afterward, outside, in the chaos of hugged relatives and photos and falling caps, Lena stepped aside for a moment. Adrian found her near a tree heavy with early blossoms. He held out a coffee. "Figured you'd need this more than flowers," he said. She took it, grateful. "Your dad?" she asked. "Cornered the dean." Adrian said, "Don't worry, he's being mostly polite for now." They both glanced over. Marcus stood under a banner, cane in one hand, gesturing with the other as he talked to the dean and the scholarship representative. His expression was animated. The dean's was strained. "They'll be fine," Adrian said. "He's just reminding them that if they sell compassion as part of their brand, they have to actually practice it." Lena looked down at the diploma in her other hand. Her name, the title, registered nurse. The letters looked almost unreal. "You did it," Adrian said. "We did it," she replied. The ICU had a different kind of noise than the rest of the hospital. It was constant, but not chaotic. A low symphony of beeps, whooshes, and murmurs. Alarms chimed in coded tones that meant something specific to those who knew the language. Lena moved through it with a newfound ease that still surprised her sometimes. She checked drip rates, adjusted ventilator settings under the respiratory therapist's guidance, changed a dressing on an old woman's surgical incision, apologizing when the antiseptic stung. "You have kind hands," the woman whispered. "Thank you," Lena said softly. At 3 in the morning, the ward dimmed. The lights were turned down. The shadows lengthened. The machines kept their steady vigil. Between checks, Lena stepped into the hallway and leaned against the wall. Her feet ached. Her back protested. Her heart felt full and empty at once. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. From Marcus. "You made it, kid." She smiled. From Adrian. A second later. "Outside your ward. Brought contraband." She walked to the waiting area. He sat in one of the plastic chairs, coat draped over the back, tie loosened. A paper bag rested at his feet. "You're supposed to be asleep," she said. "You're supposed to be too important to see me," he replied. "Come sit." "I smuggled in something better than coffee." She dropped into the chair beside him. He pulled 2 small containers from the bag. Inside, someone had packed homemade empanadas. Her mother's handwriting was on a folded note taped to the lid. "For my daughter and the man who helped her get here? Eat." Lena's eyes stung. "She likes me," Adrian said with mock awe. "That's terrifying." "She tolerates you," Lena said. "That's huge." They ate in companionable silence, the sounds of the ICU humming around them. When they finished, he wiped crumbs from his hands and reached into his inside pocket. "I brought this too," he said. He held up the framed photograph, the same one from the lake. Lena on the snow, hands pressed to a stranger's head. Someone, probably Marcus, had chosen a simple wooden frame. No plaque, no caption. Under the glass, in the bottom corner of the white mat, a small piece of paper had been taped. On it, in Lena's handwriting this time, were 4 words. "When it hurt, we stayed." She traced them with a fingertip. "You sure you want this in our living room?" she asked. It's not exactly cheerful. It is to me, he said. It's the moment our lives collided, and the proof that we can do hard things and still be here. He looked at her. Where do you want to hang it, he asked. In the hallway, she said after a moment, where we pass it every day, where we can't pretend any of this was an accident. He nodded. Done, he said. He stood, stretched his back, and leaned down to kiss her forehead. I'll let you get back to saving people, he said. Walk me to the door, she replied. They walked down the corridor together, past rooms where machines breathed for people who couldn't, past families curled in chairs, past nurses moving with that blend of urgency and calm. At the ward entrance, Lena stopped. Thank you, she said. For what, he asked. For seeing me, she said. Not as a headline, not as a charity case, just as someone trying not to look away. He smiled. That's all I ever wanted people to do for me, he said. Seems fair. She watched him walk down the hallway until he turned the corner and disappeared. Then she stepped back into the ICU. Monitors beeped. Air flowed. Life clung on. She adjusted her badge, straightened her shoulders, and moved toward the next bed. Outside, the city shifted under a sky beginning, very faintly, to lighten. Somewhere, here, snow would fall again. Someone would slip. Someone would have to decide whether to stop. Inside, a nurse who had once knelt in that snow tightened her ponytail and stayed.